Welcome to the Mind Solution podcast with Sarah Maud. The Mind Solution podcast is for leaders like you who are passionate about well-being in the workplace because you understand that a strong, resilient and happy workforce is the key to your organisation's success. The Mind Solution podcast is here to help you. So join us every week where we'll share with you powerful insights, strategies and know-how to ensure that your people and your organisation are truly thriving from the inside out. Ian, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, as somebody that's got a really successful HR consultancy, I am so looking forward to this conversation because I want to explore your mind and explore your thoughts about the magic of thinking big when it comes to investing in wellbeing training and consultancy and resilience training and anything that's all about mental health and wellbeing, which is very prominent at this time, isn't it? So would you like to just share a little bit about your background for the people that are listening?
Sure. I think I would categorise my career in HR in 3 stages. Okay, so the first stage, which was probably the first 20 years, I would say I was a tactical HR practitioner, right? So there'd be a problem and you try and solve it, a problem that was in front of your face. And I remember one of my chief execs that I worked for probably halfway through that period, she said that to me. She said, Ian, you're very good at being tactical, but you're not very strategic. And I thought, I've no idea what you mean. Right? Okay. And then I took some time out and took a couple of years out, took my kids traveling around the world, backpacking, written a book about it now. Are we there yet? It's on Amazon. And when I got back and I got into my next role, suddenly, having had that perspective and actually tested whether I really wanted to spend the second half of my career in HR or was I going to do something else, I discovered that I suddenly become strategic, right? And suddenly I was looking at things at a big picture level, okay? And we'll maybe come on to some of the challenges that I faced about actually being able to do that within what was still a silo-based organisation, where HR was still in its box in the corner. But I was thinking strategically. The third stage of my career, what started 7.5 years ago, when I started my own HR business. And we look after small businesses and charities that typically it's too small to have their own in-house function. So they outsource it to us. And of course, in starting that business, I became a business owner myself. And I suddenly realized that whether you're the owner of a small business or a multinational, actually what matters at the end of the day, 2 things: fulfilling your purpose and making money. To be frank, because if you don't make money, you're out of business.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? And so are your people.
Correct, absolutely. So those are the 2 things that matter. And therefore, everything that you do is aligned to that. In a small business, it's naturally aligned to that. You don't just send people on training courses for the fun of it. You do it because you go, actually, if they get better at that, they'll be more successful, more productive, and that's going to make us a better business. Yeah, and that line of sight is much easier. So that's the journey I've been on: tactical, strategic, and commercial. And I'm happiest in the last place because I think that's the most relevant to the stakeholders that you work for.
Yeah. I think that's so fascinating what you said, because I can really resonate with that, because as you know, my background is human resources as well. We both worked in that capacity, and you're right. We were very much, there's a problem, you solve it. And it's only since becoming a business owner myself of the Mind Solution that we've worked with organisations. And as you say, it's really interesting, isn't it? You just naturally start to think of things at that much bigger picture. So we have lots of conversations with HR leaders about management mental health training, wellbeing consultancy, leadership coaching, anything really in the field of mental health and wellbeing. And what we often find is that they come at it from that tactical approach that you described, that, we want a training course so that, for example, managers can spot the red flags. And so my questions are always, okay, but what are you trying to achieve at that big picture level? How does this feed into your organization's goals? How's it going to make you more money? And whether that's in sales or productivity, it's fascinating, isn't it? I'm glad we're both on the same page nowadays.
I think the two most important words in the English language, the first one is why, which you've mentioned, right? And if anybody is still not familiar with Simon Sinek and the Golden Circle, well, where have you been? But it's so fundamental. Why are you doing this? What's your objective? What are you trying to achieve? How does it fit with your purpose? All of that comes from why. And it's not just the first why, it's the first why followed by the second why, followed by the third why, right? Just keep drilling down.
A bit like a child.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah. The second word I think is so important is the word or, O-R. Mm-hmm. We want to do this. Or, what about if we look at it a different way? Or, have we considered this? And actually by, I think, balancing the why and the or, you get ultimately to the right solution rather than the obvious tactical one. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong, HR colleagues, there is nothing wrong with being passionate about people and wanting to solve problems and make people's working lives better. Right? It's fairly obvious, isn't it? That is a good thing, and it's so important that HR is there to play that role. Mm-hmm. But I remember being told once that the role of HR is not to be the conscience of the organisation. The role of HR is to make sure that the organisation has a conscience. And therefore, taking these important conversations about engagement and employee support and development and well-being, taking them from the HR meeting room table, real or virtual, into the boardroom is so, so critical. Yeah, because these are leadership conversations that need HR to provide challenge, to provide data and knowledge and expertise, but ultimately they're leadership decisions which HR will then support the implementation of. And if that middle bit doesn't happen and they just stay in the HR box, ultimately they won't have the impact that HR is desperate to have and the organisation probably needs, because that middle bit is missing. And I can say this because I've been there. Right? I've been in that HR box. I've sometimes managed to fight my way out of it because I've been at the top table. Other times I've not been at the top table and it's been much, much harder. And I've seen that if you can't get those conversations in the right places, understood and owned by the leadership team, then you're actually wasting the organisation's money. And you're wasting your own time. And that's not good for anybody.
No, and I love that. And I really love that, because you're right, it's that missing link. And it's interesting what you say, Ian, because we have a lot of conversations where HR have come to us and said, we want a training course. And I said, okay, let's get a meeting with your leadership team to really understand the organisation, to get into that underbelly and understand what it is that the organisation are trying to achieve and how this supports those objectives. And if I'm honest with you, that conversation often hasn't taken place. So you're right. And I wonder, what, with your new insight, what advice would you give, Ian, for HR leaders about having that conversation, bridging that gap with the leadership team and getting them involved at that beginning stage?
It is strategic. I fundamentally believe that if you have a strategic HR function, then you can have those conversations taking place in the right place. Whereas if you only have an operational and a reactive HR function, you'll never get those conversations happening at the boardroom table. So how can HR ensure it's strategic? Well, I've been hearing for probably all my career that HR needs to understand the business better. Yeah, it needs to be more commercial. It needs to make sure that it's providing commercial data that demonstrates ROI. All those things are still true. Yeah, we haven't gone as far on a journey as a profession. There's maybe I, as a bushy-eyed 20-odd-year-old, thought we might. So there's still work to do on that, and that's the responsibility of every HR professional, I guess, to focus in on that. But I also think a strategic HR function is going to be ensuring that the organisation is purpose-driven, it's values-driven and values-aligned, but also it's going to play a key role in supporting the leadership team in delivering that. And if that's in place, then the environment within which these conversations about linking HR delivery and interventions and commercial imperatives can actually take place. Yeah, if that strategic role isn't there, HR is going to be over here in its little box, doing the tactical stuff, and spending a lot of money on training courses and wellbeing interventions, all the rest of it, that aren't aligned to what the business actually needs. So HR needs to have a strategic place, as well as being, of course, really good and effective and expert at the things that they do that we're trained and professionally qualified to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fantastic advice. And you're right. I know certainly from my days in HR, which, were about 10 years ago, but I don't think much has changed if you read HR magazine, that they've always wanted to be seen more as that commercial leader and have their profile raised at the same level that you've got, your CFOs, your sales and marketing director, your commercial directors. So everything that you say feels like that would really help to support their profile, wouldn't it?
So if I'm a CEO, and I am, not a multinational, but I am a CEO of an organisation, and I think about who do I want by my side, right? Whether it's in an SME like mine, so what advisors do I want, or in a much larger organisation with a leadership team, right? Who do I want by my side? Ultimately, I want people who are going to help me to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. Yeah, people who are going to add value, help us grow, protect us from some of our risks. And ultimately, if you're only in the role that's about protecting from risks, you're always going to be in risk of being outside the room. Yeah?
I like that.
That. Whereas if you absolutely add value and the leadership team go, actually, we need that input. We need that additional angle, viewpoint on things that we haven't got in the room, then you're going to be at the top table, and then you can start to understand the business better. Because we as HR people, that wasn't our starting point. So it was an interesting starting point. Why do you go into HR? That's a whole different conversation, perhaps. But our starting point is perhaps different from the CFO or whoever it might be. But if we can understand the business really well and demonstrate added value, we'll be in the boardroom and we'll stay in the boardroom. And then we just need to make sure that the HR team that we lead is aligned with us. And that's another risk I've seen play out from time to time, is that the HR leader might be in the boardroom, but they're so busy being in the boardroom that they're not filtering back the way into the HR team. And they're still doing the tactical stuff rather than aligning it with the strategy.
Yeah, no, 100%. And you talk there about saving and making a difference and an impact. And we know that now more than ever there is such a focus on well-being in the workplace. Quite rightly, as I identified 10, 12 years ago and thought, this is the missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. And we're still 10, 12 years ago, not where we need to be. But where there is so many more organisations recognising the strategic value of having a clear wellbeing strategy, there's so much choice. And as you know, the mental health spectrum is vast, incredibly vast. And I think sometimes I wonder if there's a risk of that shiny penny syndrome, that, oh, that looks a good app, and oh, we need this and we need that. And again, they haven't had those why conversations. They haven't necessarily thought about what is it that we need to achieve. And I sometimes think that people can get a bit overwhelmed when there's so much to achieve that they almost don't know where to start. So what are your thoughts about when it comes to an organisation creating a really strategic and commercial wellbeing strategy?
Let's go back to basics. Right now, I can't do a chat with you, Sarah, without mentioning Richard Branson, because you used to work for him. Okay?
I did.
Yep.
Drank cocktails on a rooftop terrace with Richard.
Okay, so Richard Branson speaks a lot of sense on many things, but not always. Right? And of course, he's famous for these quotes, which I think are sometimes taken out of context. So a famous Branson quote is, "Just hire great people and let them get on with it." Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm always uncomfortable with that, because it's not just a case of just letting them get on with it. There's a lot more that needs to happen. And well-being is part of that. Okay, so for me, a core principle of HR management, which I've found that it can get eroded with HR people, because we spend a lot of time dealing with the problem people. And it can become easy to think that everybody's a problem. And actually, most people are not. Most people are good people, coming to work, trying to do a good job, right? But they're human, right? And sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they're in the wrong job. Sometimes they're unwell. Yeah, and we have to deal with that. And I always say we have to deal with that fairly, consistently, and compassionately. Yeah. Okay, that's my core belief in HR. Now, when I started back in the HR game in the early 90s, the sickness absence management was predominantly around physical injuries. Yeah, you know, we were coming out of the industrial age. We had office workers getting a new technology allowance because they were using a computer rather than a typewriter, and we had RSI, bad back, sore knees, all of that sort of stuff, right? And that was the majority of sickness absence. That's flipped on its head, because we didn't used to talk about mental health back then.
No, we didn't.
No, okay. Highly stigmatized, not very visible in the workplace. And to be frank, if someone had a mental health issue, the sick note probably said RSI, bad back, sore knee, or stomach issue, or whatever it was. That's completely changed. We now know that the majority of reasons given for absence are mental health related, stress, anxiety, depression. Okay? And stigma is reducing, but not yet removed. Okay? It's still there, but it's not as bad as it was. And I remember 3 years ago, maybe, I was about to do a presentation, and I was at a networking event, and I was chatting to somebody who worked for a mental health charity. And I said, I've heard this number that 1 in 4 of us will experience mental health in the course of our working lives or lifetime. Is that right? And he went, yeah, that's the number I've heard as well. And I just had a moment, and I went, that's rubbish, right? That is rubbish. We all have physical health, and in the course of our lifetimes, we will experience physical health or wellness, and we will experience physical ill health. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even if we never have a day off in our life, and we don't get physically ill until we die. You know? Ultimately, we're going to be physically unwell at some point. It's exactly the same with mental health. We all have mental health. We do. Yeah. And for all of us, sometimes we have good mental health, and sometimes we have less good mental health. And it's a spectrum from a bad day through to a full breakdown. And I'm not talking about mental illness, I'm talking about mental health. Okay. So we should look at them much more holistically. And I saw an interview this summer with an author called Matt Haig. Mm-hmm. Brilliant author. Midnight Library is fantastic. Comfort book that's out at the moment is really good. And the Comfort book is all about mental health and support for people with mental health, and he's experienced depression. So he was talking about this. And he took it a stage further than I'd ever taken it. So I've been saying we have physical health and ill health, and we have mental health and ill health. And he said, we just have health. We just have health. So the brain is just a physical matter in our body. Mm-hmm. If you get a bad back, it affects you. If your mood, yeah. If you take painkillers the other way, it affects. It's all interrelated. And I just thought, bingo, right? It's all about health. So we employ people. They're human beings. They have health, and from time to time they will experience ill health. And if we support them, both in a proactive way to obviously try and minimise that, and we support them when it does happen, the outcome of that is actually a bottom line commercial benefit. We have more people at work being more productive. The business achieves its purpose and its aims. And if it's a commercial business, makes more money. And I think for HR people, making that link is really, really important. And you need data. Yeah, you need data. But you need humanity and common sense as well. And, I think that's something as a profession that HR is still on a journey with. And I hope we'll start to realise that in a post-pandemic world, where we have hybrid working, where employees are more focused on working for an organisation with values that align to their own, that HR will really pick up the baton now and go, actually, health is a central key element of our commercial strategy as a business. Because if the people ain't there, or they're underperforming because of health issues, the business is not as successful as it could be. And that's what and if you say that to a CEO, they go, right, okay, how do we fix it? Yeah.
And it's so interesting hearing that, because actually one of the things that we teach is sort of akin to what you've just described, in that when we talk about well-being, so we have well-being in the workplace, we have well-being consultancy, well-being strategies. My take on it is we are fundamentally well-beings. The question isn't about so much how do we achieve well-being, because it's hardwired into us. The question for me is more about, for individuals, what are we doing to take ourselves away from well-being? So thinking about some of our, not taking a lunch break, answering emails, not switching off, all of those kind of things. But even at an organizational level, as a culture, we already are well-being. So what are our business leaders doing to take people away from that through expectation, policy, process? But coming back to the question, Ian, so if you're an HR leader and you've got some data, you've got some areas of the business working well, some areas of the workforce that are performing well, some not, but you're not quite sure where to start, because as I say, there's so much choice and option. What might be a top tip that you can share with HR leaders about where to start?
Just start with the why. What are you trying to achieve? What's the purpose of this? What are the indicators that you've got a problem? What are the potential benefits and gains of getting this right? And the answer, one of my favourite sayings, the answer will emerge. Yeah. The answer will emerge if you go through a purposeful process of investigation and conversation within the leadership team, potentially facilitated by somebody outside like yourself, who can really drill in the solutions at the end point. And that's the mistake, starting with the solutions rather than ending up with them. They're called solutions for a reason. They're called outcomes for a reason, because they're what happens on the way out, not on the way in.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Ian. I know that anybody listening, whether they're a business leader or an HR leader or somewhere in between, will find huge value and benefit from our conversation. So thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.